everybody. It is 3:01. It is March 3rd, Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021. Senate Education, Finance, and Policy Committee will come to order. We do have a quorum. We have several bills up today, members. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bills, including our own Senator Cwodzinski. We have a couple that are going to move pretty quick, I believe. First up is Senator Dornink with Senate File 819. Members, we did hear this before. We're going to bring it up, and it was laid over. We don't have any. There's no action to take. We're going to bring it up, and we will be. He has an amendment, and our intent is to move it off to the floor. Part of our COVID relief efforts for teachers in schools. So, Senator Dornink, you ready to go? I saw you out there.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
You do have an amendment, right?
The A1 amendment, that's correct.
Okay, so it's an A1 amendment, members. So Senator Dornink, why don't you quickly explain that A1 amendment, and then we'll get to discussing and a vote.
This amendment would provide that school districts may hire short call substitute teachers for 15 consecutive days or fewer for any content area, not just the career and technical education, as long as they meet the requirements in statute. So we're just doing a clarification. It's an author intent, and the school district's intent that were raised in the last testifiers brought this up.
Okay. All right. So a clarifying amendment. Members, any questions or discussion about this amendment? Okay. So then we do have someone to talk to this amendment after we move to adopt it. So members, cameras up, off mute. Do a voice vote on this. We'll do an aye and a thumbs up or a thumbs down process. So members, all in favor of the Dornink A1 amendment, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Okay. It's adopted. Thank you, members. So, Senator Dornink, we do have some testifiers, at least one, I believe. Mr. Killian from Education, Minnesota. Are you here? I think I saw you.
I am here.
Yeah. Welcome to the committee, sir. Please state your name, who you're with for the record, and proceed.
Thank you so much, Chair Chamberlain and Senator Dornink and members of the committee. My name is Dr. Justin Killian, and I'm an education issues specialist for Education Minnesota. Today, I speak on behalf of our 86,000 members across the state to oppose this bill and its amendments. The members of Education Minnesota fully understand the tremendous strain the substitute shortage is placing on our public school system. Our members have to postpone medical appointments, give up much needed prep time to cover for colleagues, and attend work when they are sick, all because of the lack of available substitute teachers. This was a problem before COVID-19, and we've only watched it get worse. We applaud the spirit of the bill, and for several years, Education Minnesota's staff and members have been working with the Professional Educator Licensing and Standards Board and the Minnesota Department of Education on a solution to all educator shortages, not just the sub shortage. We are in favor of new ideas, but we cannot support this bill as it stands. The solution offered here will not fix the underlying problems that got us to this point in the first place, including low compensation, public perception of teachers, and the challenges of managing a classroom of 24 or more students. While short call substitutes are limited to 15 days of consecutive teaching in a classroom, we know in many instances wherein the sub is required to take a day off and return the next day, potentially teaching an entire year under that same situation. We are talking about the adults who work with our students from all backgrounds, and we must protect the professional standards of best practice. Our students learn in different ways. There are visual learners, oral learners, students who need hands-on instruction, students on IEPs and 504 plans. In a typical classroom, you might have 3 to 5 students on an IEP. This all presents additional challenges to meeting students' needs, and this bill would have unintended consequences if we are putting folks in front of these children that don't know how to work with these populations. Finally, the language of the bill removes Pelsby from the oversight of short call substitutes. This means students in Edina will have a significantly different education than students in Eagle Lake. Furthermore, the only data reported in this pilot is the number of subs hired under this proposal. There are no metrics related to how confident the sub felt in leading the classroom, how supported they were by the administration, or how many student conduct days were led by subs. So on behalf of the students of Minnesota, please protect standards and protect kids and protect our profession. Teaching is not a hobby or casual interest. It is a difficult career. All teaching roles, substitute and full-time, must be filled with licensed, trained individuals. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Killian. Members, any questions? All right. Seeing none at this time. Again, we're going to, any final comments, Senator Dornink, and then we'll take our vote.
Well, again, this is just a 3-year pilot program trying to solve a problem. And we think it's common sense, and I believe that we want to give some of the control back to the local schools, and we know that they have qualified staff to hire qualified teachers. So with that, I hope that you will support this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Dornink. So members, with that, cameras on, off, mute.
Mr. Chair, are we voting on the amendment or he said amendment. Are we voting on the amendment or the bill?
We already adopted the amendment. We're voting
Okay.
the bill to the floor.
Oh, if that's the case, do we have time for questions from members?
Yeah, I went to that point, but nobody answered. So
We misunderstood. That's why we thought we were on the amendment. Sorry.
all right, you got a question or two, but we're going to move on. You got a question, Senator Kunish?
I do. You know, I was thinking about this a lot since we discussed it the last time, and I understand. I mean, I understand. I lived it for years and years, you know, covering classrooms, leaving my media center and covering classrooms when there weren't adequate teachers. But I guess one question, and I don't know if we have any administrators here or principals on the line here or at the committee. You know, when you look at a school district, there are plenty of resources available at their fingertips. I'd like to, you know, sort of point out that every school district probably has TOSAs, teachers on special assignment, where they are working in different areas that could be pulled into the classroom. I'm thinking about assistant principals and all that whole upper echelon of administrators, including principals who probably have had teacher's license in at one time or another. And to me, it would make sense to use those resources and ensure that those are the folks that are coming into the classroom to cover for shortages before we open it up to others that, you know, do not have that special educational training and pedagogy and information. And so it is really, you know, I can't agree with this bill in any way, shape, or form. And I'm just really curious about, you know, how many of us would like to have our children educated by non-trained teachers, you know, throughout the school year, even though we are often, you know, shorthanded in that way. We talk about the need for excellence. We talk about the needs for well-trained educators along the line. And I just can't support this bill, and I really wish that this was not the case. But I would prefer that they use the resources that are right there available to their schools, rather than go outside of the training of excellence.
Thank you, Senator Senator Kunish. Senator Duckworth, got your hand up?
Yes, sir. Thanks. I just would respond to Senator Kunish's statement or question, I guess, that was kind of posed to the collective good of the order. No, I guess I would be okay with that. But secondly, your points are well taken, and I'll just give some perspective as somebody that was on a school board just a few months ago and have been touring all the schools in my district as they try to fight their way through this pandemic. And I can tell you, one of the main concerns that those administrators, those superintendents and principals are dealing with are the inability to find substitutes to cover down on those classes. And they're stretched thin. We've got principals and staff bouncing from classroom to classroom trying to meet the demand. I understand you're probably aware of this as well, Senator Kunish. But I think this bill is a good attempt to try to afford districts some additional freedom and flexibility, at least in the short term, to try to help overcome some of those obstacles so our kids are getting as good a quality education as they can. It may not be up to the standard of the par that some of us are comfortable with, but for me, it's better than none at all, at least in terms of in person. So I respect your remarks very much, but that's just kind of a perspective as somebody who recently had to deal with some of this as we're looking at staffing shortages. And I know you've experienced that as well. So thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. Senator Isaacson.
Yeah. So I hear what's being said, and I think this bill is treating a symptom and not the problem. We adequately support teachers in the classroom. We're not going to be in this situation. And I'm not a big fan of treating symptoms. I'm a much bigger fan of treating the problem. And while I do think that it probably would do some of what Senator Duckworth refers to, it isn't what we should be doing here. That if we take our responsibilities providing funding and providing support to our teachers the way we should, the way we have in the past, this issue becomes kind of moot at that point because you're not going to need as many. And so I get in the COVID crisis, that's a bit of a special circumstance compared to other things, and I understand that. But in general, that's a much bigger solution to the problem that would help alleviate some of this. So I can't support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Isaacson. Yes, these are it's a bit of a crisis we're in. So normally these things would not be necessary or needed, but it is a crisis. And sometimes you have to step outside the normal bounds, as everybody realizes. So for that, we're gonna move on, Senator Uyghur. We'll save your question for next time, but you wanted to be out of here by 4:30. We had a discussion on this bill, but I think it was Monday or last Wednesday. It's been fully discussed, and we let Mr. Killian in today because we had the amendment and they wanted to address it. So we're gonna move on. So members, unmute and cameras. All those in favor of Senate File 819 as amended, moving to the floor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Hey.
Hey.
Nays. All right. Thank you. So with that, Senate File 819 is passed and moved to the floor. Thank you, Senator Dornink.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members.
Thank you. So next up is me. So Senator Icorn has a gavel.
All right, thank you, Senator Chamberlain. So next up, we have Senate File 1444, Senator Chamberlain's bill on professional educator licensing and standards board licensure extension. To your bill, Senator Chamberlain. Or excuse me, do you have any amendments for that one?
No, Mr.
Okay.
Chair. So members, we talked about this previously as well. I don't know, I can't remember if it was Monday or last Wednesday, but it's just the grace period for all licensing areas because of the COVID backup. The testing facilities, another 6-month grace period for all licensing positions. Again, it helps out in the short term for our educators. What we're going to do with this, I'll move that it be passed from here and move to Senate Finance, Mr. Chair. That's my motion.
All right, Senator Chamberlain, are there any questions from members quick?
Mr. Chair, what number is the bill? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
This is Senate File 1444. Did you find it, Senator Isaacson?
I'm looking through our brief. I'm going to look through yours in a second, but thank you for checking with me. I appreciate it.
Any other member questions? Okay, we'll give Senator Isaacson just a second to find it, then we'll move on Senator Chamberlain's motion to move this to finance.
Go ahead and move it if you'd like. That's fine. Thank you for waiting. I appreciate the consideration.
On Senator Chamberlain's motion that Senate File 1444 do pass the committee and be passed to the Committee on Finance, All those in favor signify by saying aye and thumbs up.
Aye.
Those opposed, no, and thumbs down. The motion does prevail, and Senate File 1444 is referred to finance. Next up, we have Senate File 1012, also Senator Chamberlain, Digital Wellbeing LiveMore ScreenLess Grant Appropriation. Senator Chamberlain, do you have any amendments?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So we did discuss this informally, and we have had an overview of this once early in the session before a bill was introduced. Then the bill was in the process of being introduced, and we discussed it in more detail, although it had not been formally introduced, so we could not formally move on it. So today, because it's as a number formally introduced, that we want to, it'll be the first official hearing. I do have an author's amendment, A1.
Okay, Senator Chamberlain moves the A1 author's amendment to get the bill in the form he'd like it to be in. Members, cameras on, mics unmuted. All those in favor signify by saying aye and thumbs up.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion does prevail to your Senate File 1012 as amended.
Yeah, thank you. So the amendment quickly, members, in the previous discussion, we won't go into all the details and problems again with social media, although we will probably touch on that. But one of the concerns talking to people since we first talked about it more formally, but less formally, was accountability, credibility. How do we ensure that with LiveMore ScreenLess? And that is a rightful question, proper question to ask. We want to be accountable, and we're going to try to address that specifically today. So the amendment gets to that, is that making sure that MDE is working with LiveMore ScreenLess and little oversight. ScreenLess would have to submit regular progress reports to MDE. Secondly, requiring LiveMore ScreenLess to submit a report detailing expenditures and activities and outcomes to the commissioner and to the chairs of the respective committees in the Senate and the House to give us some extra comfort. So we have ongoing oversight with MDE, formal requests, and then a report to this board, to this committee and the House committee next January. So with that, members, our goal is to, I'll say this before I turn it over, is that I do still believe, and bears repeating, it's an important and urgent issue to deal with in this state among others, and it is the mental health and the impact of screen time on these individuals and these children is vitally important. We must start organizing to address it in a formal, rational method, logical method and process. So with that, I'm going to stop talking. There are some testifiers to attest to LiveMore ScreenLess, and as well as some accountants, and I believe we have one testifier from Hazelton. So I'll turn over to my testifiers now, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Senator Chamberlain. I do have a list that was provided by the committee administrator. I have Tony Senna up first, and then after Tony, I've got Catherine Myers on deck. Tony, put your camera on and unmute and just state your name for the record and go ahead and get started.
Hey, my name is Tony Senna, and with the CEO of the Senna Foundation. Glad to be here again. I was asked to provide him an advisor for this organization, a young organization. So I understand the questions about trust and transparency, but I do have experience working in years ago. Actually, Mrs. Hampton actually worked with us in doing data and analysis, because that's what she does, is evaluation. And she wrote and received a $250,000 federal grant for us, and was in charge of the record keeping and reporting for that grant, which we did without a hitch, and we stayed eligible to continue receiving federal grants. So we have a history of working with Ms. Hampton. And so as a trust factor, we believe that she knows what she's doing and is accountable. You know, the reason why I decided to join this and my time is limited as an advisor was because once it's a problem, it's sort of already too late, and we may be too late. And it's not just how much time we spend in front of a screen, but what's happening there. So again, working with so many youth, we want to be able to support them and make sure that we create a safe environment that's equitable as well for kids across the state. And we believe what Ms. Hampton and KK are trying to do will help. And so we want to be able to partner with them and make sure that our kids and kids across the state have access to this.
Thank you. Catherine Myers. And then after that, we have Marie Hampton. Just state your name for the record and go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Catherine Myers. Senators, thank you for your time once again this afternoon. We're grateful for the questions you have presented before this committee regarding solutions to address the harms of digital media on the health, learning, and well-being of young people. We welcome the opportunity today to address your inquiries about the digital well-being bill. As a little bit more background that we have not yet had the chance to provide to you, LiveMore's organization is supported by board members and advisors who are experts from esteemed Minnesota-based organizations, as you just heard from Tony Sane. Those include Hazelton Betty Ford Foundation, PACER, Fraser, University of Minnesota Medical Center, and Department of Family Medicine, and Fresh Coast Collective. Today, in addition to Tony's testimony, you will hear from Board Treasurer James McGuire, accountant for Deloitte, board member and former CEO Michael Keller, and board chair Jessica Wong of Hazelton Betty Ford Foundation. And Senator Newman, I want to address you directly as you requested an expert in addiction and noted our Hazelton Betty Ford sponsorship. We are glad that Jessica Wong can provide further background and information. Senators, we're standing at a crossroads as students transition back to school buildings. Possibility and opportunity lie ahead of us to build the infrastructure that supports the well-being, specifically digital well-being of young people. For we know the manipulation of digital media design remains, as Senator Chamberlain has previously alluded. We hope you will consider this bill as a template for imagining that when future young people are asked if their elected officials tackled the issue of screen misuse and overuse, that there will be a resounding yes. Yes, you did. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up, Marie Hampton, and then we've got James McGuire after Marie. Marie Hampton, just put your camera on and unmute and go ahead and get started as soon as you're ready.
Thank you, Senator Eichhorn. I, together with KK Catherine Myers of LiveMore ScreenLess, we really just want to provide time for you today to hear from the support that we receive from our board, from our advisors, from folks like Tony Sane, who want to join together and partner with LiveMore, so that you get a sense that we are supported on multiple levels, both for accountability and evaluation and financial management. So that's all I'll share with you today, and I'd like to turn it over to our testifiers. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, I have James McGuire followed by Steve Anseth. So James, camera on, unmute, just state your name for the record.
Yep, thank you. My name is James McGuire. I'm the treasurer of LiveMore. So I've been working closely with LiveMore, specifically KK and Marie, our executive directors, over the last year on all things finance, accounting, and treasury matters. And then you mentioned Steve Anseth's name. He's an advisor to LiveMore as well, and a CPA with 20 plus years experience in not-for-profit accounting, and has been super helpful and provided oversight and guidance in the finance and budgeting process for our team. Before we jump into the budget, I just wanted to address a comment from Senator Isaacson. Appreciate you reaching out regarding the Form 990 for the organization. So that's currently in process, and we plan to have that filed by April 1st, and can accelerate that to the extent necessary. I would like to share my screen if possible to walk through the budget with the group here. So our proposed budget timeline has that oversight from our finance committee our external CPA advisor, Steve Anseth, and we acknowledge it'll be subject to annual review and more often review by the commissioner as an additional level of accountability. We created the 2-year budget to illustrate allocation of MDE funds, which aligns to the proposed Senate bill. So we've illustrated here in whole dollars and then as a percentage of total funding to help illustrate resource and expense allocation over the 2-year period. So you'll notice in the first year, we've broken it out at 2 high-level programs, which are awareness and resource development and education. And so in year 1, the primary focus and level of spend is weighted toward awareness and resource development. Year 2, the spend shifts toward education as the organization extends its reach and continues action in the community or various communities. I'd like to highlight quickly just some of the key activities that the organization is working in and will work in over the next several years. And so you'll see on the left-hand side, we've broken it out by the different activities. The first being the LiveMore Resource Hub. And this, within the awareness and resource development portion, is a library of resources for young people, parents, schools, after-school programs. Topics such as cyberbullying, gaming addiction, anxiety and depression, and social media. This will really serve as the premier resource for Minnesota for digital well-being resources. And we'll leverage our networks like the MDE, MDH, and schools in Minnesota to promote awareness and use of the Resource Hub. And then for education within the Resource Hub, we'll provide resource and education to address the need for desire for information and tools. We'll create specific school resources targeted at school advisory groups and leadership groups, paying particular attention to equity. The next item, the Digital Wellbeing Communications Campaign. We're working together with MDH to create a targeted, equitable, strategic communication for Minnesotans. Young people, parents, teachers, school leaders, out-of-school time leaders, public health advocates to build awareness and educate. State funding can provide best practice in communication campaign development. LiveMore will work with public health professionals to pilot, implement, and sustain the communications campaign. Printed posters, brochures, flyers, tip sheets, conversation guides will be developed, and we will engage with young people to create a youth voice and youth digital messaging at a statewide youth video contest. Peer-to-peer and train the trainer are 2 of the core activities of the organization. We'll create a combined online and in-person train the trainer and peer-to-peer education module. LiveMore's digital well-being leadership training of adults and young people across the state will create a Minnesota LiveMore digital well-being network that creates sustainable digital well-being leadership. And then other costs are costs that apply across the program, such as translator and evaluator expenses that are necessary to run the organization. I'd also just like to acknowledge that for the G&A, the general administrative expenses are expected to be at or below 10% of total funding. A vast majority of the resources, as seen here, will be directly allocated to the programs themselves. And then a couple items that are additional in year 2, as you can see the ramp up in education resource allocation. So the peer-to-peer and train the trainer will ramp up as these are core activities. Legislative funding will allow LiveMore's education initiatives to reach 10 times the number of adults and 10 times the number of young people in both the train the trainer and peer-to-peer initiative. And then the Digital Wellbeing Youth Summit and Conference, that's proposed for fiscal year 2023, and the annual Digital Wellbeing Summit furthers the time and investment in the education programs and leverages future awareness raising and education. And again, would just like to point out that the allocation to management and general expenses is less than 10% of total funding, with a large majority going to the programs themselves. So hopefully that was helpful to highlight the budget here. I just want to stress again, confidence in our structure and working with KK and Marie and the rest of the board, our advisors, our executive directors, and our ability to meet budget demands and ability to meet the demands of taxpayers. So I'll pause there and thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire. I've got Steve Anseth up next, followed by Michael Keller. Steve, just unmute yourself and go ahead and state your name for the record.
Thank you, Senator. Steve Anseth, I'm a partner at the accounting firm Abdalek and Myers. I head up our nonprofit practice there. Really here just to again, lend more weight to the fact that LiveMore can adequately supervise and expend these funds that they're requesting. Our clients at the firm range from $100,000 to $85 million. I'm a frequent speaker at Minnesota Council nonprofit events on all things really nonprofit finance related, internal controls, proper accounting, et cetera. So, and this is a cause that I'm deeply committed to. I have two teenage kids, so spending time on screens, both needful and unneeded, is really important to me. So, and I've known KK for a couple of years as she's been starting to ramp this organization up, and I'm super excited to see what they could do with these funds. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Michael Keller, followed by Jessica Wong.
Yes.
Mr. Keller, just state your name for the record and go ahead and get started.
I will. Thank you. Michael Keller, Chair Chamberlain and members of the committee. Thank you for having me here today. I have a longer statement that's been submitted. This will be an abbreviated version of that. I'm here in support of LiveMore ScreenLess, or LiveMore, of which I am a board member. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you my belief that LiveMore is well positioned for success related to the activities of Bill SF 1012. I believe this for two reasons. First, I am the former CEO of Pearson Candy Company and the former Chief Marketing Officer of International Dairy Queen. In the nonprofit world, I had the opportunity to serve the Pacer Center here in Minneapolis as their Marketing Advisory Board Chair and help them launch the National Bullying Prevention Center. I also served as Chair of the Board of Governors for Children's Miracle Network Hospitals, which raises hundreds of millions of dollars through corporate sponsorships for children's hospitals, including Gillette. In my capacity as senior executive and nonprofit board leader, I believe that KK and Marie have the relevant experience and intellectual capacity to lead with both vision and credibility. Combined, they have over 50 years of training in education, public health, and program assessment. They've assembled an incredible collection of advisors and board and youth council members to support and guide them. In short, I hold that LiveMore is well on its way to reliably, consistently, and cost-effectively deliver excellent education and awareness programs to support its mission to help youth achieve digital well-being. And now maybe something you don't hear very often. Second, on a personal note, I want to share with you that I was a bullying victim in my early teens. It was brutal, it was life-altering, and had a long, everlasting tail. I can uncomfortably say that had social media and smartphones been around when I was being bullied, I would not be here today talking to you. Yes, I joined the LiveMore board to support two talented executive directors and to share my corporate and nonprofit leadership experience. But far more, I joined because LiveMore is the right organization at the right time to promote balanced and intentional use of technology in our youth culture. Like Pacer's Bullying Prevention Center, LiveMore is poised to protect children's health, self-esteem, and even save lives. To summarize, I believe that today's youth desperately need a caring, educated, trained adult community and peer network to support them. LiveMore has the track record, the vision, the skills, and the team to build out and manage this structure. Through your support of Bill SF 1012, Catherine and Marie and LiveMore ScreenLess, in coordination with schools, school districts, departments of health and education, and communities, can make a profound difference in the lives of Minnesota youth and one day the country's. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Last testifier, Jessica Wong. Just pop your camera on and unmute and state your name for the record, please.
My name is Jessica Wong, and I'm the proud chair of the board for LiveMore ScreenLess. In addition to my volunteer work with LiveMore, I'm a national director of youth and family outreach for the Hazel and Betty Ford Foundation, where I've worked for 16 years, and I'm a nationally renowned speaker on the topics of teen addiction, mental health, and screen use. I'm a certified prevention professional through the state of Minnesota, and I was at one point a licensed foster care provider through Hennepin County and a volunteer crisis intervention counselor. Adolescent mental health and well-being isn't just something I do to earn a living, it's something I have dedicated my personal life to as well. While my passion for adolescent mental health stems from the impact it has had on my own family and loved ones, my professional interest in the topic of how technology use impacts the still developing teen brain grew after a consistent observation I was making while working at the Hazelden Betty Ford Foundation. Annually, we admit approximately 2,000 young people from across the country to our adolescent and young adult facility in Plymouth who have been diagnosed with addiction to mood-altering chemicals, 98% of whom have co-occurring mental health issues as well. As I was watching these young people enter our facility to receive the help that could save their lives, I noticed a troubling trend. Oftentimes, it was more difficult for the young people we served to surrender their phones while in treatment than it was for them to give up their drug of choice. This sent me down the path to explore and research the relationship between technology use, misuse, and addiction. We know that there are many similarities between addictions to mood-altering chemicals and addiction to video games, social media, and other technology. Most notable, perhaps, is the way that the use of screens, like use of mood-altering chemicals, restructures the reward system in the brain. Additional similarities include the presence of withdrawal symptoms, such as agitation, depression, anxiety, mood swings, changes in appetite and strong cravings, and the potential for negative consequences, such as loss of or damage to friend and family relationships, loss of job, or lowered academic performance, giving up other activities and hobbies, and a decline in physical health. According to the Minnesota Student Survey and many other national surveys, adolescent mental health, addiction, and suicidality numbers continue to rise, and it is clear something needs to be done to address these troubling trends. It's my professional opinion that technology use plays a critical role in the mental and emotional health of our young people, and continuing to ignore the impact that unbalanced and unhealthy technology use can have on our kids will only lead to greater cause for concern. Building on their work over the last couple of years, LiveMore ScreenLess has the opportunity to help reverse these trends, help our young people, and lead the way towards digital well-being in the state of Minnesota. I believe the co-founders of LiveMore ScreenLess, Ms. Hampton and Ms. Myers, have the knowledge, the experience, the passion, and the drive to carry out this important work, as well as the support of a very active board of directors, advisors, and youth council members. I'm grateful to the Minnesota legislature for the digital well-being bill we're discussing today, and believe that LiveMore ScreenLess is the right organization to carry out this important work so needed by our young people, our families, and our communities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. That's the end of our testifier list. Any questions from members for Senator Chamberlain or the testifiers? Senator Cwodzinski? You're on mute, Senator Cwodzinski.
Sorry. Okay, so Ms. Wong, I just want to thank you for your, I don't see you anymore on here, but I'm sure you're still here somewhere. That's some pretty powerful testimony coming from Hazelton, and you know, when the kids are coming in for their treatment and recovery programs, and they're more likely to not give up their phones than their drug of choice. That's some pretty powerful testimony. So I appreciate that. I'll be voting for this, but I'm just my only concern, and you've heard this before, is first time money, first time organization asking for this kind of money. I'm looking forward in a year from now to hear how the programs worked and how the success stories that you bring to us, and because I think this might be the Hazelton's probably going to maybe branch out and work on this as well as their chemical dependency issues that they're Minnesota's proud to call them a partner in all this. So anyways, thank you, Ms. Wong, for your testimony.
Thank you. Senator Isaacson and then Senator Kunish.
I'm sorry, you know how it is when you're on Zooms, you got several meetings happening at once. I just want to conclude, did we put a dollar amount on this, Senator Chamberlain?
Senator Chamberlain?
Not yet. Not yet, Senator Isaacson.
So are we passing this? Did you say we're passing on to finance, or excuse me, Mr. Chair?
Senator Isaacson or Senator Chamberlain?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, Senator Isaacson, it is being laid over.
It is, okay. And then the last question, I mean, I talk to my teachers for my kids, and they are equally as concerned, and I think getting ahead of this is super important. And I share the same concern that Senator Cwodzinski shares, in that I'm a little concerned about it going to a group that I don't know has been tested yet. At the same time, I hear what you're saying, Senator Chamberlain, about how we got to get the ball started somewhere, right? And so I hope that in that first year of just kind of showing the development, and I believe the earnestness of the group, I don't question that at all. I just want to make sure that we're on our game and tracking that so it makes sense and we're getting what we think we're paying for and we're getting some results. And so that's my biggest concern, but I applaud everybody involved for getting ahead of something. This is, I would tell Senator Duckworth, who's new to the game, that this is very unusual for the government to be in front of it instead of on the backside of it. So it's a little confusing to watch. Senator Chamberlain.
It's very true. Next up, we have Senator Kunish, followed by Senator Uyghur.
Thank you very much, and thank you, testifiers. I 100% agree with all of you. As a library media specialist for 25 years, I've seen the progression of the use of technology and the mandates that come down from schools and school districts to use the technology more and more, almost exclusively from any kind of tactile book. You know, social studies is now taught from the online curriculum. Math is taught online. Reading comprehension, you know, it's test all day long. And then of course, students probably go home and sit in front of their computer or their phone. And I get that whole brain wave sort of situation. I think it's really important that we study the effects of all of this technology. But I guess at the end of the day, I'm wondering how we as a society or an educational system can mandate that kind of use. We all know it's important to get outside and walk and run and play ball. And yet a lot of our kids sit inside because there aren't programs or there isn't enough time in the school day to have a recess or participate in athletics. So there are so many things here that I don't think we're doing quite right by our students, and definitely the screen time is one of those. But my question right now is, are there any other campaigns? And I guess I recognize this as more of a communication campaign rather than an educational curriculum program. Basically, you're going to be collecting information, creating data, putting it into a form for us all to look at and read, sharing it with school districts, and then making some suggestions. So the amount of money that we would put towards this, I guess I would first of all like to say I would rather reinvest that back into our schools to have actual people, like maybe another teacher in the classroom or that sort of thing. So that's what I would rather see our money invested in. But my other question is, are there other campaigns or communication campaigns such as this, very similar to what you are proposing?
Senator Chamberlain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Kunish. I'll give a quick piece and then I'll turn it over to LiveMore ScreenLess. From what I know, there's only them. I have been looking into this for probably 2 years or 2.5 years. And in Minnesota, I've only found LiveMore ScreenLess. You know, Senator Cwodzinski has a proposal that we like very much as well, and it takes a little different tack, and where his is informative and asking MDE to create information, and then I think that would pair well with LiveMore ScreenLess and their activities. So Senator Cwodzinski has kind of an information campaign we're looking at in awareness, where LiveMore ScreenLess intersects with that a little bit about information and awareness. But I believe LiveMore ScreenLess here is to be more intervention and advice, and here's how you can address the problem and do it the best way possible. But I'll turn it over to KK, as she is known, or Marie. Maybe they have more. Marie looks like.
I see Marie's hand up. So Marie, if you can answer that.
Sure, yes. Thank you, Senator Kunish, for that question. And just wanted to point out just a couple of things. We early on talked about the approach that we're using, which is whole school, whole community, whole child, with the child at the center, with the belief and then knowing it's a best practice in public health that you engage many different community members to support that child in the middle. And this is actually a public health crisis. And with any kind of public health problem or behavior, the very first step is awareness. Long term, we'd like to see some, policy changes in schools, policy changes and that will support digital well-being. We're not there yet. We're just getting started. So when we approach this work with this particular bill, we want to raise awareness around the issue. We also concurrently want to raise awareness about the resources we want to provide to a parent who's super concerned about their child spending many hours gaming, to a teacher who's super concerned about the level of distraction and how does that teacher talk to the parent about the need for sleep and getting screens out of the bedroom. We really believe that it's important that we make this resource hub accessible to every corner of Minnesota. We want Ely parents and we want Worthington teachers to access our information. And so by starting with awareness and starting with this resource hub and this communication campaign, we believe we're setting up our state to then take a step further and be informed and make some choices and changes in how education's delivered, how students are counseled, how parents are communicating with their young people around digital well-being.
Senator Kunish.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on all of those. Again, I am a little concerned about the potential price tag. And, our schools, many of our schools have library media specialists in them. And what we do is do instruction around media literacy. I've taught many a course on cyberbullying and ethics and, the best use of technology. So I guess I was asking if there was another program out there. I know there are bits and pieces here and there that we use through our curriculum in our school districts, but I would really love to support this, but at this time with that kind of a price tag on it, until we really know what our budget is, what our targets are, what other things that we might be needing to pay for within our school district. I don't know that this is something that we should be applying for at this time, but just know that I 150% believe in your mission.
Senator Kunish, my understanding is this will get laid over, so we'll have time to continue the discussion because we don't have targets yet, like you mentioned.
Right.
Next up, we have Senator Uyghur.
Yes, thank you. This is a very important issue, and we all share that. And perhaps if any of the testifiers may want to respond to the question, you pointed out, that the relationship, the addiction for smoking. You talked about the concerns for bullying and drugs. You hear from Hazleton, and thanks, Ms. Swan, for all that you're doing there. This is addictive as well, digital use, and not only among students, it's a problem with adults as well. And I'm wondering, doing the campaign is great, but are there some remedies that we can look at short term that would do some restriction? There have been, and I did send some information to some of you about what other states have done, and or it can all be a voluntary, put the info out, but there have been targeted approaches to putting some restrictions on. And just like we've done on bullying, and we've had some robust discussions as to whether even that should be outlawed, and it is now, and especially cyberbullying, the issues. So, you've talked about addictions, how it can affect, it can take one's life, and such moving testimony, and so can the digital addiction. Are there some recommendations in addition to public information that we might look at adopting? And if anyone might want to respond to that.
Are you addressing to Senator Chamberlain or to one of the folks from LiveMore?
To the experts, the testifiers.
Hey.
Chamberlain could certainly weigh in too.
Senator Chamberlain's an expert.
I will, I will say one thing, then I'll turn it over to the experts, the smart people. Senator Cwodzinski has another piece of this. The first part of his short bill says limiting screen time, and I think that's a start. You know, I don't think it's enough, but it's a start in that direction. With that, I'll turn it over to Wong or Marie or whoever.
Somebody from LiveMore want to take that?
Sure, this is KK, and thank you, Senator Weiger and Senator Chamberlain, for this question and for addressing it. Senator Weiger, I believe in our first testimony, you were asking a similar question, so I appreciate the time again to address that. As a former educator of 25 years, Senator Weiger, I am very aware of the problems that are happening in the classroom as administrators and teachers attempt to put policy around screen use. I think Senator Knoosh is asking the same thing. What is it that we are doing as educators in promoting the use of technology? And what are those guardrails that need to be implemented? And that is a big question to be asking. In a previous conversation with Senator Chamberlain, I acknowledged all the rules that legislative bodies have put on driving, driver's education, driver's licenses, what it is that we expect of young people before we put them behind the wheel of a very dangerous automobile. And we attempt to put in so many guards around their safety. So at this point, which I appreciate that you all have addressed, that the government is trying to get ahead of something. And so we applaud that effort in getting ahead of it. We can continue to consider what is it that we can do to apply safety. Now, as an educator, I know how very hard it is in a classroom where cell phones have not been allowed. And let me tell you, those cell phones are still in the classroom. If they're not, many of the things that are on the cell phones are still on the devices. So considering a comprehensive approach, I think, is really important. That yes, perhaps we marry the two, but in looking at the awareness and education building of this bill, and then perhaps looking at what are some of those policies that can help further that. So I really hope that we don't lose sight of building from a public health model, from building from a whole community, while perhaps continuing to think, what is it that we need to do to create a policy that gets a cell phone out of a classroom, that says that once we're back in school, that no kindergartner through fourth grader maybe can have a device, whatever those rules can be, but perhaps we need to be outside of a pandemic before we really look hard at that. And I hope that you will continue to press hard on those questions, Senator Weiger, and I hope that you also see that digital well-being can marry well with working on those such policies.
Senator Weiger?
Yep, thank you.
All right, seeing no other hands up, Senator Chamberlain, final comments on your bill?
Thank you, members, and thank you so much to these amazing testifiers, Mr. Santa and McGuire, Anseth, Keller, and Ms. Wong, Dr. Wong. I think it's solid testimony and solid information about the issues we have. I know we still have some questions and a little hesitant about it, but I hope we come together, and with Senator Cwodzinski's proposals and these proposals, I know it's moving in the House, they're getting onto it. We will start addressing this problem head on, as Senator Isaacson talked about getting ahead of it, and that is simply the game. I'm just, like anybody else concerned, and just haven't been in a position to try to do something about it. But I think this is a bipartisan effort to address this demon in the closet, as it were. So with that, just lay it over as amended, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
With that, Senate File 1012, as amended, will be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. Next up, we have Senate File 782, also Senator Chamberlain, Education Extended Time Revenue Expansion to Student in Residential Treatment Facilities with Mental Health or Juvenile Justice Services. Senator Chamberlain, do you have any amendments for 782?
Yes, we do have an A01 amendment, Mr. Chair.
All right, members, mics off, cameras on. Is this an author's amendment?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chair.
On Senator Chamberlain's A1 author's amendment, all those in favor say aye, thumbs up.
Aye.
All those opposed, thumbs down and nay. The motion does prevail to your Senate file as amended, Senator Chamberlain.
And just quickly, the amendment just clarifies the definition in the bill for a children's residential facility. So members, we all know that extended time revenue is available to schools for students who need extra service during the day or the weekends or the summers and various other things. But usually this extended revenue is not available to those in residential, those children in residential facilities. So there is one exception. There is one in Wilmer, Lake Prairie, I believe. What this bill would do is give extended time revenue to all these residential services if they're residential services. So we're clearing it up and giving it to others as well as they provide services through the summer months to these children who need it. So it's that simple, just expanding the definition extended time to include those at residential facilities, make their revenue available. It's about $1 million a year cost. There is a fiscal note with the package. And that is all. I have no testifiers.
I have one testifier on your
I do.
Sandy Lewandowski.
No, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Two of them, I see. I do see two. All right, Miss Sandy on here. You know, I see you. They're just unmute yourself and please state your name for the record and go ahead and get started.
Terribly sorry.
Good afternoon. My name is Sandy Lewandowski, and I'm the superintendent of Intermediate District 287. And my district provides educational services to 11 West Metro school districts. And we are often responsible for some of the highest need learners in the state, including students in setting 4 special education, students attending area learning centers, and students receiving an education while attending care and treatment facilities. My district provides education to such programs as those run by Alina, Headway, Hennepin County, Nexus, Prairie Care, Volunteers of America, and Paragon. And I'm here today representing all 4 of the intermediate school districts. I want to thank this committee for its focus on race equity, trauma, and student mental health, because for the students in our programs, most are affected or impacted by all 3 of those priorities. The current statutory language for extended time revenue allows students to receive extra funding for learners who may benefit from additional instructional time up to an additional 20% above the formula allowance. In a district like mine, we serve very high need students in very different settings, such as our 4 area learning centers. These students are eligible for that extra 0.2 funding, but it contrasts with the 7 care and treatment facilities who cannot currently access this additional 0.2 funding. The current inequity is amplified for students who have some of the highest needs in the state. Similarly, the current statute showcases a patchwork of funding for some students, but not for all. As this committee amplifies the priorities of race equity and mental health, it is important to point out this example. Currently, the current statute allows for a school district that provides educational instruction to the 2 care and treatment facilities mentioned by Senator Chamberlain in Greater Minnesota. They have the ability to receive extended time revenue. However, students in other care and treatment programs in Minnesota, such as those served by my district and other intermediates, are not able to access this additional funding for extended instructional time. For students in our correctional facilities and residential mental health programs, they often come to these programs in crisis, deficit in credits, and in some cases, such as the Hennepin County Homeschool, the students are disproportionately students of color. The inequity of the current situation is that a student currently attending an ALC and therefore eligible for the extra time and the extra instruction it provides. However, if that same student would have a major mental health crisis or is sentenced to a juvenile correction facility or is admitted to a day treatment program or a PRTF, that student is no longer eligible for that additional revenue. This bill allows all school districts across the state who are responsible for educational services for care and treatment programs that are located within their boundaries. Members of the committee, we are trying to address the equity issues in our school. Approval of this bill eliminates one such inequity, and I urge you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. The other testifier I have listed is Connie Ross. Ms. Ross, if you just unmute yourself and turn your camera on and go ahead and state your name for the record and get started.
Thank you, Senator Eichhorn, Mr. Chair, and members of this committee. My name is Connie Ross, and I'm the Director of Residential Programs for North Holmes Children and Family Services. We provide residential treatment for children in Grand Rapids and Bemidji. I also serve on the board of Aspire Minnesota. These comments that I'm making now are on behalf of all Minnesota care and treatment programs in support of Senate File 782. The youth we care for are young boys and girls ages 10 to 18. As I'm sure you're aware, there's a growing children's mental health crisis in Minnesota. The need for care and treatment programs is critical. An estimated 109,000 children and youth in Minnesota need treatment for serious emotional disorders. The children we serve have serious complex mental health needs. They are unable to function safely in their communities and in our public school settings. These children present with suicide ideation, aggression, have been exposed to significant trauma, including neglect, sexual and physical abuse, and have exhibited a failure to thrive in their homes and in our communities. As a result of what I've just described for you, these children have also experienced a disruption in their education. Children served at North Holmes most often are at least a half to an entire year of school behind in credits in order to pursue graduation. We have had children in our care that are 2 years behind in the required credits to graduate. This equates to just one more disappointment and failure in their young lives. Positively, while in the structured environment of residential treatment, we can actively support them in meeting their educational goals. Our hope for each student is that they can transition back to their community school and be at a grade level where they can integrate back into education and school activities with their peers. An example to demonstrate my point of need is young Jack. Young Jack had multiple suicide attempts, which resulted in 6 hospitalizations within the past year, placements in foster care, and finally placement in a residential treatment program. As you can imagine, each hospitalization placement interrupted Jack's educational experience. Jack grew gravely behind in school. This resulted in Jack simply giving up and not attending school at all. Prior to admitting into residential treatment, Jack had not been in school for the entire preceding year. Upon completion of residential programming, Jack had enough seat hours to be transferred back to his home school to allow him to be at the expected grade level. Most importantly, Jack was so proud of his accomplishments. He was able to demonstrate that he was clearly talented and he could succeed in his education. Alternatively, during the summer when children admit to residential programs and we do not have the extended school time for students, we see that our students fall behind. Truly regrettable, as we know that they could be using this time to not simply keep up on their education, but to make substantial gains. As care and treatment providers of intensive services for students, we are emphatically supportive of all opportunities to enrich their experiences. School is critical, and collaboration with our local school districts is fundamental to delivering quality education to our students at this very critical time in their lives. We urge you to support Senate File 725 to assure all students can make the gains while in residential treatment. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today.
Thank you, Ms. Ross, and I can certainly attest to the great work that North Holmes is doing. So thank you for testifying today. We appreciate that. Any questions from members for either Senator Chamberlain or the testifiers? Seeing none, that was easy. Senator Chamberlain, final comments on your bill?
Thank you, members. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you. Great gratitude to the testifiers. Hopefully we can do this and help you out a little more. as we move on. So thank you so much for the testimony and for what you do.
Is this a layover, Senator Chamberlain?
It is, Mr. Chair.
All right, with that, Senate File 782 as amended will be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. Next up, we have Senate File 710, Senator Duckworth, and I'll be handing the gavel back to the chair, Senator Chamberlain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members. So Senator Duckworth, Senate File 710. You want to give us a rundown of what you have here?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. This bill is about affording flexibility to our school districts and school boards as they continue to serve our kids in unprecedented time. School districts are required to allocate some of their revenue into funds and accounts other than their unrestricted general fund to ensure spending for certain purposes. In 2020, in recognition of the challenges that were posed by COVID-19 and other circumstances, a law was passed allowing for the transfer of money between operating funds and accounts for a 2-year period, as long as they were not already encumbered by federal law or for staff salary and benefits. Such transfers would require a written resolution that approves the revenue redirection. This bill builds on the fund transfer flexibility that was passed last year by allowing for fiscal year 2021 only districts to redirect any reserved or restricted revenue within a fund. Again, to reiterate, such a decision made by a school board would not be allowed to affect funds already encumbered by salary and benefits or federal law. Also, such transfers or redirections are not allowed to increase state aid obligations, so there's no fiscal note for this bill. Also, at this time, Mr. Chair, I would like to offer an oral author's amendment, if that's appropriate.
Okay, Senator Duckworth, what is the oral author's amendment?
Mr. Chair, the oral author's amendment would strike section 2, lines 2.22 through 2.26.
All right, well, 2.26. I'll just have, just so everybody knows, Miss Marie Lewis, you want to address that quick for everybody so they understand it?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members, in fact, the amendment would just be to delete section 2 on page 2.
Thank you.
So.
And members, that's the long-term maintenance revenue. I would agree, I would guess, simply because we want to give the schools maximum flexibility to do what they need to do, no matter how little it is. The long-term facilities maintenance revenue gets a little trickier for obvious reasons. But just because we're striking it from here doesn't mean it won't be included in a later bill or discussion. I wouldn't disagree with this 100%, Senator Duckworth, just because of the tricky nature of it. But we can discuss it later too, and maybe include it in a later bill. You have any comments on that, Senator Duckworth, and we'll vote on your author's amendment?
I do, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate your comments. It's a concept, I do support it, but I've come to realize in conversation with others and other stakeholders that there may be some second and third order effects that still need to get ironed out in relation to that section of this bill, which is why I offered that amendment. So thank you, and I do look forward to still maybe having a discussion regarding the temporary use of those funds for things districts may see as a priority.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. So, members, author's amendment, cameras on, audio, all that good stuff. So, members, all in favor of the A1 author's amendment, say aye. The oral amendment.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All opposed, say nay. Author's amendment, thank you. So, your bill as amended, you've explained it. You have a testifier, I see.
I do, Mr. Chair. I would love to turn it over to Ms. Dietrich if you'll allow it.
The infamous Ms. Dietrich. Please welcome to the committee. Please state your name and who you're with for the record.
Thank you, Chair Chamberlain and members of the committee. As was stated, my name is Denise Dietrich. I forgot the infamous part of it though, but I'll take it.
In a good way.
Just don't mute me today, Mr. Chair. So I'm testifying in support of Senate File 710 as amended. I am also testifying on behalf of the Minnesota School Boards Association and the Minnesota Association of School Administrators, as well as the Association of Metropolitan School Districts. We want to thank Senator Duckworth for bringing this bill forward. As we all know, COVID-19 has created fiscal challenges and disruptions to school operations over the previous year. Senate File 710, as amended, provides flexible one-time responses, which schools are asking for in responding to these challenges. This bill provides school districts the local authority and flexibility to redirect funds from any reserved or restricted revenue to another use only, and I want to emphasize that, only after the adoption of a written resolution of the school board. In short, it allows the district to put money where it is needed the most. If this bill moves
This is something I'd like to keep going forever. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. The bill. Go ahead.
If this bill moves forward, it may be helpful to define the term redirect. We are not familiar with this, with the legal significance of that term, and some clarity may help. And also, I want to add that this bill, as we read it, provides greater flexibility than the legislation that we passed in 2020. Under that legislation, school boards were required to pass a board resolution and submit a fund balance transfer request to MDE for approval. And under this bill, it would be our understanding that MDE would not have to process the redirect revenue action taken. And this simplifies the process for both MDE and school districts. We hope that this committee continues to work on Section 2, which was deleted in the amendment. We strongly support additional flexibility in the area of long-term facilities maintenance revenue. So that concludes my comments, Mr. Chairman, and I would stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Dietrich. Okay. All right, members, any questions, comments? Seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Dietrich, and thank you, Senator Duckworth. I think this adds to the kind of a COVID relief sort of thing, as Ms. Dietrich alluded to, and as you did as well, to create flexibility and some resources for the schools. So my thought, Senator Duckworth, is that we'll move this to the floor, a separate bill as well. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair.
All right. So Senator Duckworth, any closing comments?
Nope, just I appreciate the opportunity and the support of members to do what we can to support our school boards and districts. And Ms. Dietrich, I appreciate your comments and made note of a couple of the things that you mentioned, so I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Duckworth. So members, we have a vote. I'll move. Well, Senator Duckworth, you make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I move that Senate File 710 as amended be recommended to pass and be sent to general orders.
Perfect. Members, audio on, off mute, pretty faces up there. So all in favor of passing Senate File 710 as amended, the floor, general orders, say aye.
Aye.
All right, all opposed? Good. Members, thank you. Thank you, Senator Duckworth, and thank you.
Thank you all.
With that, Senate File 710 is passed as amended and sent to the floor. Thank you. So we had two bills up. They're kind of similar. Senator Howe and Senator Cwodzinski. Thank you, Senator Howe and Cwodzinski, for your patience. So I think we can, Senator Weaver, I think we can do this in 15 minutes. I think we got it. So Senator Howe, you're up first, and then Senator, present your bill, and then Senator Cwodzinski, you'll be up after him. But we have two testifiers for Senator Howe, and then one for Senator Cwodzinski. Oh, that's right. I got yours, Senator Cwodzinski. I got yours. All right. So with that, Senator Howe, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senate File 221 is a bill that allows youth groups of patriotic societies to go to public schools and talk to the kids about joining their members and becoming members of their organizations. I will tell you that many years ago when I was a young lad, I was a Boy Scout. How did I join? The Boy Scouts came and did a presentation at the school. And that's how I decided, you know what? I want to be part of that. Many years later, my two older sons both joined the Boy Scouts. Why? Because the Boy Scouts came and did a presentation at the school. My daughter, just a couple years later, and my youngest son never joined those organizations. Why? Because in between that time, things changed and these organizations started to get refused for being not allowed to come into the school districts and present their organizations to the schools. And that really made a difference in the recruitment. And it actually is now a problem. And these, at any time in our history where kids need some direction, some unity, and some activities, now is that time. So what this bill does is it allows for 2 weeks in September for these youth groups of patriotic societies to have access to public school buildings in the districts to talk to students about their society and their organization. Now, the bill actually names the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts, but it does say any other youth group listed as a patriotic society in the United States Code of Title 36. So I just quickly looked at it, and because there's about 100 organizations in there, but the 5 that you might be familiar with is Big Brothers Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Clubs, Civil Air Patrol, Little League, National Music Council. So it is a wide breadth of different organizations. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it over to my testifiers and let them explain why it's so important for them, these organizations, to have access.
Thank you, Senator Howe. The first I have on is Mr. Toole, then Mr. Aronson. Mr. Toole, welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and who you're with, and you may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Chamberlain, Minority Member Uyghur, and honorable members of the committee. Thank you for allowing us to testify on behalf of Senate File 221. My name is Kenneth Toole. I'm a senior district executive with Central Minnesota Council of the Boy Scouts of America. I'm also a disabled American veteran. I'm also joined on my end by Chad Sackett, who is also a veteran and serves as our volunteer membership chairman for our council. We come before you today to request the passage of Senate File 221 for the purposes of improving the relationships between our educational institutes and the numerous organizations covered under Title 36 of the United States Code. Currently, there are at least 7 other states that have passed this legislation or something very similar. In 2018, this legislation was actually passed by both the House and the Senate of the state of Minnesota. Unfortunately, the overall bill was vetoed by the governor and did not, unfortunately, become law at that time. Senate File 221 before you is vitally important for our youth organizations and the numerous other groups such as the American Legion, the VFW, and the DAV. The question is often brought up to us as to why we utilize U.S. Code Title 36. That is covered under legislation on the federal side that does something very similar and was included in the No Child Left Behind Act, called the Boy Scouts of America Equal Access Act. But we want to see this particular legislation in the state level to ensure all of our groups are playing on the same music and operating at the same level. To address the section of Title 36 that again stems from the No Child Left Behind. This covers a large variety of groups, as Senator Howe alluded to, including the American Legion, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Clubs, Civil Air Patrol, former members of Congress, FFA, and so many others. We often get the question as to why this is necessary. As Senator Howe alluded to, you don't get the reaction from a young person without being able to talk to them. We want to improve the relationship between our schools and these numerous organizations. We don't look to force them into anything, but we look to be a mutually beneficial relationship with equal access. Because the benefits are on both sides, the school is given clear language that they can point to when a group asks for permission, and they can either say you're covered by Title 36 or you're not.
when we determine which group is making the judgment, the school has to make no judgment call on their own. They can look to the list. The wording of Senate File 221 is important because it tells you who is permitted, when they're permitted, and what is permitted. This proposal allows people to speak to students, which is vitally important. I have been in front of numerous students and at many times throughout my years as a district executive, and to see their excited faces when you're talking to them about joining Scouts and the wonderful things that they get to do in Scouts. And I hear back from the parents at joining meetings, and the student came home and gave them the exact line that I said, right down to the please and thank you, sign me up for Scouts. To put a flyer in a child's backpack or to say that it's in the virtual backpack that the student brings home does not give you the same reaction as being able to talk to a young person. Young people also don't get excited about a piece of paper. They get excited about talking to a person. And you can't get the same message through if you have a veteran in front of them talking about patriotism and being a patriotic person and the American flag. Some school administrators have raised concern over the number of groups that are covered by this important legislation. But I raise the point that when we have taxpayer-funded schools that are looking for more support from their communities, what better way than to have them be a partner with the institution? We are not looking for free reign over the school or to disrupt learning. We are looking to enhance the lives of young people. Extracurricular activities are a wonderful benefit for our young people. The Minnesota State High School League runs commercials all the time on the radio talking about how great it is for extracurricular activities. And we are looking for that same benefit. Someone who is looking for something like scouting or FFA or the Boys and Girls Club provides something different from a sports, but they're just as vitally important. Our taxpayer-funded schools are wonderful places, and we want to work with them to provide great programs for the young people of Minnesota. We also would like to point out that this does not open the floodgates, it just makes an opportunity. It should be understood that many of the groups
You just went to mute.
Yeah, you just muted yourself.
Okay,
Right.
he's back.
papers.
But
I just have to ask you, you got to wrap it up, Mr. Toole, though, if you got it.
I am done, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay, thank you, Mr. Toole. Thank you very much. Next up, Mr. Aronson.
Afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Roger Aronson. I represent the Elementary and Secondary Principals Association and actually on behalf of the other lobbying groups today, just talking about this bill. We want you to take a look at the language in it real clearly. Obviously, we'd agree with Senator Howe that Boy Scouts are really important. I'm the father of an Eagle Scout myself. But a couple things about the bill. This language says that for 2 weeks every September, the districts have to allow these groups to come in and talk to students. Doesn't say what grades, doesn't say how often, doesn't say how long. And those are some problematic pieces for us, whether or not it's voluntary or mandatory that students would have to go to these meetings. The language does not limit itself on the face of it to Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, or the Title 36 folks. And the Title 36 is an interesting list on the federal. But it says a group or organization intended to serve young people under the age of 21. And that is kind of problematic in terms of making a list of who that might be and what those would be involved with the mandatory meetings. We would say that I think that schools actually engage in a lot of activities to support the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and make information available for other organizations as well for our students to participate in. Making this mandatory and physical access to the kids during the learning day, we'd resist that. I do think there's maybe a solution, and we'll visit with Senator Howe about this, but Minnesota Statutes 120A42 talks about us conducting patriotic observances on the presidential birthdays and other days, if we're going to hold school on those days. And maybe we could add the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts into that provision and come to some amicable resolution of this. But in the meanwhile, we would resist this about giving, and not these particular groups, but allowing any groups access during the instructional day. One last thing, federal law does say other groups can use our school facilities during non-instructional time
provided they're student led, and the Boy Scouts are specifically included that in the federal law as well. So there is a pretty good statutory scheme on this as well, Mr. Chair. But I understand what Senator Howe's talking about, and Mr. Toole as well. And like I say, maybe we can come up with some answer to this.
Thank you, Mr. Aronson. Any questions, members? Seeing none. Senator Howe, final comments?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would just say that when you look at the language, I will agree, we can probably come to an agreement on it. But when you talk about a youth group of patriotic society, and for the purposes of this section, it does say that it needs to be listed in the Patriotic Society in the U.S. Code. So, and we could tighten that up if it needs be. But I believe that that's what is the intent, is that we agree we don't want to open the floodgates for every organization to come in there. And we could probably tighten that up. We meant for they can come in and talk to different grades during that 2-week period. That way it's selective and it doesn't open up to going throughout the year. So I would be open to having that discussion, Mr. Aronson, if you'd like to give me a call and touch base, and we can further.
I'll do that, Senator. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, testifiers. Thank you, Senator Howe. Appreciate it. With that, Senate file. Yeah, I imagine you two will chat a bit, okay? Mr. Aronson has a couple of good points. So chat a bit about that. So with that, Senate File 221 is held over for possible conclusion. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Senator Cwodzinski, Senate File 630. You're up. You don't have any amendments, I don't think.
No. You're muted.
Okay, you're fired, Cwodzinski. You're muted again.
I won't even say a joke because I've used them all. The bill, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members. The bill before you is Senate File 630, which would allow youth development organizations to have access to school facilities to distribute literature and promotional materials. Senator Howe and I are totally on the same page. Civic engagement is so important to developing our youth to become engaged citizens, and we need to allow them the opportunities to find out about these organizations and how they exist. If kids don't have something constructive to do, they're going to find things destructive to do. I over my 33 years in the classroom, those kids that were Eagle Scouts, those kids that were still in Girl Scouts, they were in a league their own, and we need to have more of those kids continue in scouting and find out about scouting in the first place. If the kids feel a sense of belonging to something bigger than themselves, that's a purpose in life that never ends. And so, it doesn't just apply to scouting. It's 4-H and Future Farmers of America. And so anyways, my two testifiers, that you guys are going to be brief, right? You two. So get to the point. And but anyways, it's a good bill, and Senator Howe and I will get to the end game here and allow more scouts get their information out to the kids. So, and other organizations. So thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have two testifiers.
Senator Cwodzinski. So there's 3 testifiers, and the 2 here, Colleen Brazier and John Andrews. Are you both from the same organization, Colleen?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be rude, but in the interest of time, probably one of you, whoever wants to talk about this, will take you.
Okay. Yep. Thank you very much. My name is Colleen Brazier. I'm the Deputy Scout Executive of Northern Star Council. I will be very brief. Really, I'm asking for support of this bill. We want to help ensure that all youth and families have access and knowledge about experiential learning and youth development opportunities in their communities. Right now, 70% of kids join scouting because they received a paper flyer that went home in the backpacks of their elementary aged kids. We also know that many school districts are going to virtual backpacks is what they're called, but virtual flyers. Less than 1% of those flyers are ever opened or seen by parents. And so we like to say that at least if a flyer is in the hands of a parent, a kid can be excited about it, a parent could be excited about it, but they at least acknowledge, yep, this activity is going on. This isn't just about Boy Scouts, it is about all youth organizations that are providing experiential learning opportunities for kids. Prior to COVID, only 51% of low-income students were engaged in after-school activities. We obviously know that with COVID, that is much lower, and we want to make sure that we're getting in front of all families, and a paper flyer does get in front of all families. The electronic version is not. And in order to get involved, you know, we want them to be encouraged to join activities that engage civic education, leadership skills, community well-being, additional learning and development outside the classrooms. And to do that, parents need to know where to go, how to contact organizations, how to get their kids engaged in organizations. And that's the easiest way is through a paper flyer. And so we're asking that you help support this and allow for schools to provide flyers to go home with elementary aged kids, because it is an important way to engage those kids and their families within community activities. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And it's at B-R-A-I-Z-E-R?
B-R-A-Z-I-E-R.
Okay, thank you. Then thank you, Ms. Brazier. Mr. Aronson, you're up again.
Mr. Chair, Roger Aronson, I represent the Elementary and Secondary Principals Association. Very quickly, MSBA has a model policy on this. It's policy 904. Most school districts have adopted it. It's got some pretty good guardrails in it that we like. People have to submit their flyers to community ed. We approve them, et cetera. That doesn't seem to be what the bill is here. Listening to the testimony, sounds like it's more they want paper flyers as opposed to the electronic flyers in the bill. I didn't actually get that up front, but I think that's something maybe we could talk with MSBA and make some modification to the model policy that they put out there. I think we could do this without a statute. The language poses some problems that we think we can that the model policy addresses. So let's talk with Senator Cwodzinski and see if we can't work this out with the Scouts that they can send paper flyers. I didn't realize it was a problem that they were just electronic.
Thank you, Mr. Aronson. I bet you're a blast to hang out with, knowing all those statutes and all that policy. Oh my God.
You know, us Rogers have to stick together, Mr. Chair.
Well, I wasn't counting, so it might be boring. So, Senator Cwodzinski, you have any closing comments?
Yeah, I just, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're off mute.
I know, I just assumed I was muted at that time. Anyways, you know, our civic organizations like Rotary, VFW, American Legions, Optimist, Elks, Lions, all those wonderful institutions that help make America great. Our numbers are declining in those types of organizations. So whatever we can do to get kids addicted to this civic engagement process at an early age and get them in Scouts or 4-H or whatever the organization may be, let's get it done and get the kids participating in this wonderful thing called democracy. So thank you, Mr. Chair and members, for allowing us to go over a few minutes of our time. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cwodzinski, for your patience, and the testifiers for your patience. We're very close to that time, Senator Uyghur. So maybe Howe, Cwodzinski, and Aronson can chat a bit. Maybe there's one thing that'll work here that will satisfy. I would agree that electronic just doesn't do it as much, and tidy it up a bit. Maybe something can work. So with that, members, thank you very much for your time and attention. We will hold over Senate File 630 be held over to possible conclusion. And members, we are adjourned. We'll see you Monday.